So, like I said, you can't. The older you get, the more math you go through, the higher levels of math. We don't round using decimals anymore. It's just not something that's okay. Right? If I were to turn my calculator on its side and put the square root of 45 into my calculator, I would get 6.7082. This decimal that goes on forever and ever. And when we're designing spaceships and buildings and things like that, you can't just be like rounding. You need to be perfect. You need to have it exact. So square root of 45 equaling 6.7 blah blah is not okay in higher level mathematics. We need something more concrete. And this is how we simplify those radicals is I can say, okay, what are there any perfect squares that go into 48? Okay, which is why I told you to take a picture of that last video. You have this list of perfect squares here. Oops, that should be a 10. I just erased it, whatever. Anything goes into 48. And if you're not sure, just be like 48 divided by 36. Nope, doesn't work out perfectly. 48 divided by 25. No, you get something weird. 48 divided by 16. 16, it turns out, does go into 48. Right? Exactly 3 times. So you are allowed to sort of break this thing up into, it's the same as saying this. Ew. Okay. Okay. Which is the same as this and this, right? So you break that down. You take you sort of, I don't want to say factor out, but you find the perfect square that does go into it, break it down, and now I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 16. But I know from my list the square root of 16 is 4, right? The square root of 16 is 4. So I can just make that a 4, right? And it becomes radical 3 times the whole number 4. And we always put the whole number out front, like it's a coefficient. So let's try another. Okay, so I'm looking at this 128. And oops. Okay, so I'm going to use my list. 128 divided by 100, that doesn't work out. So that's not a perfect square that goes into it. 128 divided by 81 gives me something real weird. So that doesn't work out either. 128 divided by 64. Ding, 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 ding. 128 divided by 64 is 2. So all of a sudden, this thing becomes radical 64 times radical 2. All right. And then we have to ask ourselves, what's the square root of 64? Square root of 64 is 8. So we just write that. And our radical is now simplified. Okay, so I already went down my list for this problem. Literally, I paused it and messed with the calculator. 252 divided by 100, weird decimal, no. 252 divided by 81, weird decimal, no. 252 divided by 64, no. 49, no. 36, yeah. 252 divided by 36 is 7. So those are the numbers we're breaking this thing into, right? So this now becomes, what did I say, 36 times radical 7. And the square root of 36, right? The square root of 36 is 6. And that's how that's done. Okay, going down the line. 100 obviously doesn't go into 80. 81 obviously not. 64, no. 49, no. 36, no. 25, no. 16. 16 goes into 80 5 times. So this becomes radical 16 times radical 5. And the square root of 16 is 4. So you got 4 radical 5. Boom. Okay, so this already has a number out front, and that's okay. Like this just, oops. This means 2 times radical 32. So let's simplify. Actually, I'm going to use different colors. 2 radical 32. So now let's focus on simplifying that radical 32. So I run down my list and I realize that 16 goes into 32, right? So all of a sudden, what we're looking at is this, we have this blue 2 that just kind of comes down, times. Now breaking down radical 32, I'm going to say 16 times 2 is 32. So then I've got 2 times, and the square root of 16 is 4. And then this radical 2 is just still hanging out. And then, so I've got 2 times 4 times radical 2. Don't overcomplicate things by getting weirded out. 2 times 4 is exactly that, 2 times 4. So let's make this 2 times 4 into an 8. Radical 2 comes down. And that's your final answer. All right. Just like we were allowed to take a square root and break it up, you can also combine them together to make your life easy, right? So just like we broke them up, I can actually multiply across, right? So 5 times 20, you can like put them under the same little house. Oh, cool. And then 5 times 20 is 100. And running down the perfect square list, I know that the square root of 100 is 10. So you should always combine everything and then pull it apart because it gets easier that way.